Hello and welcome to the third episode of Vuelogs Crosscheck Podcast. That's already two more episodes than I ever thought I'd be making after the pilot episode with Billy just a couple weeks ago. If you like these videos, make sure to share these with your favorite YouTuber as well, so that hopefully we can get them as a guest on the podcast. One guest today that we're having is someone that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. And I can't believe that he made the time today to be on the podcast. Of course, I'm talking about Jeb Brooks.
Oh, hey, it's really early. Give me just a second. Just a second.
Whether it's an inaugural flight, retirement flight, or a Dash 7, it seems like Jeb Brooks is always experiencing something awesome. He has developed an excellent way to bring his viewers along on his journey. And in just 3 short years he's been uploading flights, Jeb has been able to grow his channel to a whopping 155,000 subscribers and almost 22 million views. Welcome to Vuelogs Crosscheck Podcast, Jeb Brooks. Welcome to the podcast, Jeb.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin. This is I am humbled and flattered that you would invite me on. Thank you.
Yeah. So, how long have you been home? I've asked you the same question to Blake a couple weeks ago. How is North Carolina?
So North Carolina is good. We're sheltering in place. This is day number 49, I think, 48 or 49. They kind of run together. But all is well here. It's a beautiful spring day, and I was able to get out and get a mountain bike ride in before I sat down with you. So it's all good.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm really happy that you found some time in your probably very busy quarantine schedule here to sit down with me. Same question. Also, I asked Blake. Did you have to cancel any flights?
Yes, we did. We canceled trips. Let me think about this. We had this epic trip that was going to be really amazing from here down to Santiago de Chile.
Wow.
And then there's that flight that goes out to Easter Island, which is the world's most remote airport. It has really cool features to it. Then we were going to fly up to make our way to Bora Bora and then come back. So we had to cancel all that, postpone it. And then I was so excited to compare the British Airways A350 to the Virgin Atlantic A350, but we had to postpone that as well. So yeah, we've lost some travel, not to mention some work stuff, but that's the nature of the beast right now.
That's right. It's a weird time. How do you think the airlines are handling it, and how are airlines going to look like after this?
I am not an expert in airline economics or anything like that. That said, I think that they're in a tough spot. There's no cash or limited cash and incredible expenses to running an airline. So I think, from my seat on the sideline with the benefit of my comfortable couch, I think they're doing as well as they can. I think that the real challenge, of course, is with all of the people whose livelihoods and whose families depend on those jobs in aviation, and I really feel for them, and I know what it looks like when travel just completely dries up, and that's what they're facing, which is tough.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that has ever been described in any economics books, and I mean, your job's not economics. You're more of a sales guy, I believe. Who is Jeb Brooks?
Who is Jeb Brooks? It's a good thing I've got all day, Robin. This is all again on a cold March day. No, I'm just kidding.
I was born at a very young age.
That's right. So yeah, I have the opportunity to lead a sales training company along with my brother. So that business is really built around developing and delivering sales enablement courses for all kinds of companies all over the world, which is really what started me traveling. And as I was traveling for work, I was at the same time watching, all of the great icons of this industry of trip reporting, making videos. And I was like, that looks like a lot of fun. And that's kind of how I started. So a lot of my travel is still for work, but I'm able to tie in, I think you're probably like me, where a vacation is as much about the flight as it is about wherever I'm going. So I'll be able to, get creative about where I take vacations.
Yeah, I had a trip where I met my parents down in Mexico a couple months ago, and I was like, sorry, mom and dad, I haven't seen you in a couple months, but I really want to try out this airline in Mexico. Now I can, so I'll just be away for a day or so.
And that sounds completely normal to me. I don't know that it would sound normal to other people, but that sounds completely reasonable to me.
Yes, because I went to visit a friend there, and he was like, "Wait, you're just coming for lunch?"
Yeah, I gotta catch this plane. I mean, yeah. What's wrong with that?
So you do travel a lot for work. Do you just fly business class, or are there economy class flights there that we just don't see in the background that you do take as well?
Yeah, I do. So I did the low-cost carrier comparison. I guess that was last year, where I flew America's three lowest-cost carriers: Allegiant, Frontier, and Spirit across the country. Made a video about that, a series of videos about that. I do fly economy. It's just I found that there's more to talk about in business and first class. I think you've said that in the past, and I think you're exactly right. And then I look at sort of a focus of a channel. And I think, your last guest, Blake Edgington, is the king of economy. I think nobody does an economy video quite as well as he does, because he's just, that's his focus. And I think that's really amazing. There are a couple of economy videos way back in the archives that are humorous, I guess. But yes, the short answer to your question, Robin, as I sort of take a little meandering path, the short answer is yes, I do fly economy. Just don't typically make the videos about them.
Okay. Something that you've mentioned pretty much every video is greener grass. What does greener grass mean to you?
All right. I knew that this question was going to come up, and I debated whether I would give you the quick answer or the sort of longer answer, and I'll give you the longer answer. So I, many years ago, call it like maybe 2005 or 6, not to date myself. I was working on this project with this team, and the project doesn't really matter. It was at work, and I was in a consulting company in Arizona, and I come up with this idea for the name of the project, which is Greener Grass, because it was about like optimistic, like the grass is always greener, and so this was going to be a better result, right? And so I went out and I bought the domain name greenergrass.com, and I made this big presentation to my bosses about how this is what the name of the thing, and like it was like in my mind it was Don Draper in Mad Men, like making this beautiful presentation, and at the end they were like, yeah, that's a dumb idea. So I was left with greenergrass.com as a domain name. Fast forward to 2012, I took my very first trip around the world, and I wanted to come up with a way to document what I saw, experienced, who I met, the stuff. So I created a travel blog called Greener Grass, and then fast forward again to starting YouTube, and I don't know, whenever that was. And I really don't know why I said, hi, it's Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com, but I did, and I've said it just about every time ever since. And I don't know, it's people will see me in airports and yell, hey, it's Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. So it's like my name now, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. Have you found it yet? Would you say the greener grass?
I say this on my website. I believe that the grass is greenest wherever you want it to be. Like that's a choice you make. And for me, often the greenest grass is up in the sky, flying somewhere exciting. But I've learned through quarantine, frankly, it's right here too. I mean, it's easy to sort of think, well, I'm stuck here, there's nothing to do. But there's always something new around the corner if you just look for it. So the grass is greenest wherever you want to find it.
I actually want to quote you. I think it's something you wrote a long, long time ago, we all succumb to the thought that somebody else must have a better life. Do you remember writing that?
That's interesting. I do not remember writing that. That sounds profound.
Is that I found it like you wrote a couple books. This is something that I found, and I think it's yours. Around the World in 80 Hours.
Wow, I do. Now I know exactly what you're talking. I can't believe you found that.
It's it's very expensive on Amazon Kindle. I think it's $1.
Wow. Yes. Now I do remember. That's in the final chapter. Yeah, I do remember that now. And that's the truth. Yeah. This was an incredible experience. I was able to just disappear for 30 days. And so I took a sabbatical, and I took this trip around the world, and it's what opened my eyes to really getting exposure to different cultures and different people, and stepping out of my comfort zone and all of that. And that was really one of my biggest takeaways. Wow, you've rocked my world, dude. Like, seriously. I hadn't thought about that in such a long time. But yeah, so here's what happens. I think all of us think, oh, well, Robin's got it better because he's able to make these videos on YouTube and travel across the Atlantic like it's nothing. And he goes and flies Cathay Pacific first class to Vancouver, and he has this amazing life. Well, I mean, yeah, you've got a great life, but so do all of us. It's a choice about how we frame it up. But we do succumb to that sense of the other. Yeah, wow. I'm going to reread that. Thank you. And thank you for the 99 cents. I think I'll probably see about 4.5 cents of that.
This was actually in the example chapter.
Oh, you did? All right, I'll find the PDF and email it to you.
Well, it did surprise me because if you Google Jeb Brooks, it's not YouTube that comes up on the sidebar. It's Jeb Brooks, the author. You did write a couple books. Is this Jeb Brooks pre-YouTube?
No, probably concurrent, really. I mean, so a big part of our work at the Brooks Group is understanding what's going on in the world of sales management, sales leadership, and I'll use the word loosely, interpreting it for our clients. And one of the ways that we do that is through the written word, through books. So yeah, I've got a few. I've had the privilege of writing a few books, which is it's hard work. It's a lot of work. But it's also a lot of fun and very fulfilling. Not quite as quick a turnaround as YouTube, but the same sort of creative energy goes into it.
Okay. Do you want to explain some more about the books that you wrote?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some really. Actually, I'll tell you. So, I was flying to Australia one time. This is not answering your question. I'll answer your question, but it just reminded me. And when you go through immigration, you got to fill out the card, and like, what do you do? And so sometimes I'll just put writer, author, writer. And the woman in immigration in Australia said, "Oh, you're a writer. Are you any good?" And I said, "No." So there is a narrow audience for the books that we write. These are not going to be classics, but I did. I'm really particularly proud of one called The Sales Manager's Dilemma. So if you have a group of salespeople, obviously they have a leader, a manager, a sales manager, or sales director, whatever the title is. That book kind of unpacks the pressure that person's under. Think about any frontline manager, anyone who manages frontline employees, right? They've got pressure from the team looking for advice and input and coaching and all this. They've also got pressure from the people above them who are pressing down on them. So it's a challenging job. And so I feel like that book was a really neat one in that it sort of gave some practical tools to relieve some of that pressure. But The Sales Manager's Dilemma. You know what, Rob? I'll mail you a copy so you don't have to buy that either.
That'd be awesome. Now, you mentioned Sam Chewy earlier on in the podcast already. Now, I don't want to talk about Sam Chewy because this episode obviously is about you. But you did ask Sam Chewy a question early on in when I think you were on doing this just a couple months. If you can see my screen.
Yes.
And I want to ask you the same question. if you can answer this.
Yeah, so we're on Emirates' new business class cabin, in Emirates' new business class cabin from Brussels to Dubai. Sam, I have watched your videos for a long time and really admire them. Tell me, from your perspective, how have you as a YouTuber, you as a trip reporter, how have you evolved? What's changed for you?
So yeah, what's changed for you?
I'm telling you what, you are a master interviewer. Like, no joke. I'm not sucking up at this point. I'm just telling you, like, that's you're good. I really hope that Crosscheck continues beyond quarantine, because this is really good.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So how have I changed as a YouTuber? I think that the biggest secret to YouTube is, well, it's three things. Number one, start. Number two, be consistent. And number three, be yourself. It goes that far. The hardest part is number one, I think, is starting, followed by being yourself, because it's really appealing to kind of copy somebody. You know what I mean? You talked about that in your interview with Blake a little bit. How have I evolved? I mean, I've learned a lot about editing. I think maybe it was Blake who said this in your interview. I know I've talked to him about it before. I love the flying, obviously. I wouldn't trade that for the world. I miss it tremendously right now. But the part of this that I really enjoy the most is the editing, because it's an opportunity to be creative and sort of tell a story and learn new things and all that. So how have I evolved? I think it's really in continuing to learn the craft, continuing to experiment, continuing to make mistakes, continuing to take risks. Look, anybody who does this kind of content, the kind of content you and I make, is kind of in trouble right now, unless you got a really good backlog of content, which is to say, it's not like I can just hop on a plane and fly to LAX with a dream and a cardigan. I've got there's a little Miley Cyrus joke. I can't believe I just made that. Maybe we'll cut that out. Actually, we probably won't. And then that'll be like the part that my mother sees. Anyway, that's a whole thing. All right. So back to it. So we're all having to get creative. And one of my colleagues at the Brooks Group made he quoted, I think it was with Jeff Bezos. He said, constraints drive creativity, the paraphrase. And that's what happens. The constraint right now is we can't get in the air. So we're getting creative about the kind of content we're putting out there. And some of it will succeed and some of it will fail. But failure doesn't necessarily equate to a lack of views. Failure doesn't necessarily equate to no subscribe. Failure is different for everybody. So, for example, we're recording this on the 2nd of May, and you'll release it, I guess, in a few weeks or something. Next week, perfect. So I just released a video where I did a survey, and I released a video with the results. And it's a real stinker in terms of views. But what it was for me was an opportunity to try something new, to learn, okay, my audience isn't really that interested in it, but I really enjoyed creating it. I got some good information. Like, how can I tweak that? Are there other ways to use this idea? You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the ways I've evolved is a willingness to. Well, it's interesting. All right, so this is what's cool about this too is I've had no opportunity to prepare. I don't know the questions Robin was going to ask.
And it's your own question too.
Good point. All right. So I think that I've learned a formula in terms of storytelling when it comes to most flights, the typical flight. Like I know sort of the arc of that. But the other ways I've evolved is trying new things. You know what I mean? Is the experimenting. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Thank you.
Now, how has your professional life, how can you use what you learn in your professional life? How does it affect your videos? Like, you're a salesman. Are the things that you learn during your work as a sales trainer, is it something that you can use in like your voiceovers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I've learned that applies from my professional career is of course communication and confidence and a willingness to just put myself out there. That's certainly true. But there's also something, this is not exactly what you asked, but it's related. What I've learned from YouTube that has applied in my real life.
Yeah.
And I think there's a book called The Four Agreements, which is an incredible book. It's really, in many ways, changed my life. But one of the concepts, but basically, like the premise of the book is if you live by these four principles, your life becomes better. And one of them is don't take anything personally. So on YouTube, there is a lot of incredibly personal stuff that people say and just mean things. And what I've learned from YouTube that has applied to me in real life offline is those comments are rarely about me. They may be directed toward me, but they're rarely about me. And as long as I'm following another agreement, doing my best with creating these videos and being authentic and being myself, and that's data, that's input, but I don't take it personally. So your question was, what do I use in my career on YouTube? But I want to take it to what do I use from YouTube in the real life? And it's that, like, people can say stuff about me, say whatever you want about me, like, thank you for the input, but I'm me, and like I'm not really affected by that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's I think you have to be strong to be on YouTube, right? Especially if you put your face out there. That's something that you definitely have done right from the start, and we can actually look at one of the clips there from one of your early videos.
I love this.
I just want to show. Let me share the screen.
Coming to you from the Air France A380 first class dressing room. And I'm here because, why not? Why not? But I wanted to talk to you to say that the meal I just had, I wish I could say it was the best meal I've ever had on an airplane, but I can't. I can't say that.
You can't say that.
Instead, I've got to tell you, it's the best meal I've ever had.
Yeah. Yes. Was this the first time you ever put a camera in front of your face?
You do your research too. Yeah, you're exactly right. I had produced one other video that was sort of the caption driven video from a flight from Atlanta to Honolulu before my first time taking the Island Hopper, which I've taken now 3 times. Crazy. And
for fun.
It was tons of fun. I love that thing. Anyway, so I did that caption driven thing, and then I had, this is really kind of this is what the catalyst for YouTube was. I realized there had never been a video on YouTube about Air France first class La Premiere in the A380. There was no video. So I decided to give it a go. And I remember being in the Air France first class lounge at Dulles. I'd found this this really cheap one-way fare and decided to just give it a go. I had to get to, where was I going? Porto for a conference. And so I'm sitting in the lounge, and I've got my camera up here, and I'm sort of shaking because I'm trying to keep it steady, because I'm nervous about it. I'm the only one in the lounge, nobody's around, but I've got my champagne, and I'm like, really, it was nervous. It was nerve-wracking just to do it. And but then I put the video together, published it, and I had a buddy of mine who from the conference, and it was like, you got to come see this, because I uploaded it, and I was watching the views go up. I was like, this is unbelievable. I don't know what this is. And it was, I think that the success of that video was because it filled a void. Like, it was like there had not been that particular piece of content put out there, and people were curious about it. But that was the very first time I put my face out there, and it was nerve-wracking. And then, as I've gotten more comfortable with it, it's like, yeah, people are going to look at me and give me funny looks, but whatever. I mean, I enjoy it.
So when you uploaded that now almost 3 years ago, who did you have as an example, other than maybe Sam Chewy, who was out there making similar content?
Dennis. I have always admired Dennis, and I'm proud, Dennis Bunnick. I'm proud to call him a friend. I mean, I think he would say the same thing. We're friends now. And I really was drawn to his work on YouTube because it related to what he did, what he does. He would tell you this, videos for tour salespeople. So he owns a tour company, and so he uses his videos to send out to people who are selling tours, to send to their customers to understand what these different classes of service look like. But I just really like the way his videos flowed. He had good commentary. He described exactly what, in his case, a leisure traveler would want to see in a seat and a meal and all that. And I sort of think about the business traveler when I create my videos. Like, where do you put a laptop? Like, if you're flying in business class, there's a good chance you've got business to do. How are you literally using this for that work? Yeah.
I was actually watching the video from when you and Dennis met in Greensboro, where he gave you the KLM 787-10. I think that was one of the funniest videos I've ever seen of you. I think if you need alternative content, you and Dennis should start a comedy duo.
I tell you what, and half of it you didn't even see because it wasn't on film. I mean, we just really have a blast. I mean, we have a blast together, and that's the thing. Like, it goes back to it. Like, just be yourself. If you're gonna do the YouTube thing, just be yourself, and you will draw people in and connect with other like-minded people.
Yeah, because there's so many people starting right now, right? Like what Blake said on the podcast last week. Like, everyone's got a phone in their pocket with a 4K camera on there. Like, how do you see that the field of aviation content creation has changed since these 3 years you've been doing it now?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, the access to it is ubiquitous. I mean, not at the moment, but anybody who's on an airplane can do this. And I think that's great. We were talking before we started rolling about the fact that this is not a competitive environment per se. I mean, I guess in a way we're competing for time. People have so much time, but like, you're talking about billions of potential viewers, so that doesn't really count. I think there's room for all of us, for anybody that wants to create, this kind of content, and I think that makes it richer. I think that's what's fun about this, is we get to see how other people are traveling and what they're experiencing and all that. And I think that's the best part of these various social media outlets. They get criticized a lot, but the fact of the matter is, we can connect with communities of like-minded people all over the world, which is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to date myself, but when I was growing up with the Wright brothers, there were only so many aviation enthusiasts. So it's nice that there's so many more of us that can link up now.
So what do you, obviously you can see the YouTube stats. What does your viewer look like geographically, but also demographically?
Yeah. So the vast majority of the viewers of our channel, let's refer to it as our channel, because the creative director, my girlfriend, is the brains behind the thing. Pretty much any good idea for a video or a series has come from her. But it typically, the vast majority of our viewers are in the U.S. They're between 24 and 35 years old, kind of. And they are primarily male. I mean, like 97% male. But it's interesting. There's kind of another category. This is what I've taken out of. This is intuition. I think there are, and I bet most people who make this kind of content see something similar. There are the aviation enthusiasts, people who just love airplanes. Mm-hmm. And then there are the people who are planning a particular trip. Maybe they're thinking about a honeymoon, and they're trying to decide, well, do I want to upgrade to business class, or do I want to look at premium economy, or what is first class? And so there's this whole subset of people who are, and this is really what I thought was all there was on YouTube when I started, were these travel planners. Am I gonna literally, this is a review site. So back to that point, I would sometimes get feedback from people in the comments like that I'm ungrateful for the opportunity to fly business class because I would have some sort of critique of a seat or something. And, I considered it sort of a responsibility. I still do, as reviewing the seat.
Yeah.
And making a determination about like how I could help somebody decide whether they wanted to spend their hard-earned money on this particular thing. And I think there's value in that. I had the chance, you showed a clip earlier, I had the chance to interview the CEO of Delta, Ed Bastian. And before we started the cameras rolling, I was sort of explaining what we do, what you and I do, Robin. And he was like, free marketing, that's great. And that's exactly, it's not even free marketing. Like, we're paying for the seat. Like,
yes,
we are paying to market for you. And so sometimes that means offering some criticism. And I say every now and then in videos, like, don't mistake criticism for a lack of gratitude. I'm incredibly grateful for the experiences that I have, but I want to help people make a decision about whether they want to spend for an upgrade or whether they want to go to a particular place with a particular airline. Like, that's my intention.
And especially in business class, it's an expensive ticket. So you have certain standards that you expect that have to be met. And if that doesn't happen, then, well, you did spend a lot of money. So I think it's well worth it to critique that, because only with feedback, someone can get better, right? And I'm happy that you mentioned Delta. Delta is a big part of your channel. You happen to be able to interview the CEO. How did that happen?
Look, it's send him an email. I sent him an email. I had we had an intern at the Brooks Group a few summers ago, and I was looking for something for him to do, and I said, "Who's the most famous person that you want to talk to?" And he for some reason he said, I guess it was Bill Ford, the CEO of Ford Motor Company. I think Bill Ford. Anyway, Mr. Ford. He said, I want to talk to Mr. Ford. I said, okay, congratulations. Your assignment for the summer is to talk to Mr. Ford. And he did it. I mean, he reached out to the guy's office and set up a conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes. It went for like an hour and a half or something. It's amazing what happens if you ask. You know what I mean? And so all I did was I shot an email to Ed Bastian. I was on a flight out to LA. And we were on final approach, and I shot the email to him. I guess it was about 7 o'clock we landed because, it was, I don't know, it doesn't matter, 6 o'clock. This was like 9 o'clock back here. And by the time we landed, he'd responded. It said, this sounds like a great idea. I've copied my head of communications. Let's set it up. And then at the bottom it said, sent from my iPad. I mean, these people, like, here's what we forget. Like, these people are still just people. I mean, so reach out, like, try something crazy.
It's true. You reached out and now you're here.
Yeah. I reached out to you on the podcast and you said yes. I mean, I'm like, that's so amazing. It really is.
So you are a big fan of Delta. Like, you're a frequent flyer. You're probably Delta Medallion, Platinum.
Yeah. I'm actually a diamond flyer with them, and I also have 1,000,000 miles.
Wow. Just 1,000,000 miles just with Delta.
Just with Delta in the seat. Like, you are sitting in a seat for 1,000,000 miles with Delta.
That is crazy. That's a lot. But what makes you such a big fan of Delta?
So what's really cool about this format, I don't want to come across as too sycophantic about your podcast, but what's cool about this format is it can really be a deep dive. Like Q&A videos that we've all done to one degree or another sort of feel very me-centric. Like a Q&A video just feels it's too, but this is definitely me-centric, which is great for a YouTuber. We love to talk about ourselves, but it's also it's more fun because I can go deeper with things. So in a way that just would be too deep for most viewers. Yeah. So thank you for the platform. The reason I fly Delta so much is that back in the early 2000s, my two options out of Greensboro, North Carolina, like with mainline, aircraft, were then U.S. Airways. Yeah, they were Airways at that point. U.S. Airways and Delta. And so I had a flight or a trip. I don't remember where I was going, somewhere out west. And I flew out with U.S. Airways and I flew back with Delta. I kind of like the idea of U.S. Airways because the hub is Charlotte. So worst case scenario, I could just hop in a car and drive up if something happened with a delay or a cancellation or something like that. But the flight attendant, and this is what's so tough about being cabin crew. Okay, the flight attendants on U.S. Airways were just not very nice. Mm-hmm. And then the flight attendants on Delta were like over the top nice and just great. And so set aside the YouTube thing, like whoever those cabin crew members were made a fan for life who is, I don't know, 5 or 6 years deep being a diamond and a million miler and all this. And US Air, now American, lost a customer. And then tack onto it the YouTube. There's no way anybody could have known that. But the YouTube thing where I'm talking about how great Delta is a lot in a really public way. And so that's why that is such a hard job. And another reason I think Blake's channel is unique. Like he has a perspective on being cabin crew that most of us don't. It's really pretty cool. And so anyway, I really empathize with how hard that job is and how important it is. But again, a little bit of a tangent, but Delta, I love Delta because of the mainline service out of Greensboro, because of the pretty typically great cabin crew, not to say you don't get a rough patch every now and then. And I just think it's a really cool company. So I'm a fan.
Cabin crew is extremely important because KLM, my home country's own airline, you've recently flown it on the 777, where you nailed it on the head with about the cabin crew as well. You'll love them. And that's really what I think KLM do really well. Like their hard product isn't fantastic. Like they have the diamond seat in business class. But every time I do get on one of those blue birds, it's like coming home, right? And is that something you feel with Delta?
100%. They had an ad campaign a couple of years ago that was that, and it was like business traveler in I don't know, Buenos Aires or Amsterdam or somewhere. As soon as you step on, and I'm sure this is true for anybody's like favorite home airline, right? Especially a national carrier, not that Delta is, but KLM certainly is. You step on board that aircraft, you're like you're home. It just feels good.
Yeah. Now, I think one of the ways why Delta have a really good crew is just because the company treats them really well, and it's probably also due to at Bastion. You at the Brooks company, you are the chief culture officer. Am I right?
That's right.
What things in Delta do you see what they do with their personnel? Do you take to the Brooks company and bring to your own employees?
Yeah, cool question. Culture is this thing that is a buzzword that a lot of companies ignore or don't pay attention to. Some people hear it and kind of roll their eyes. But the reality is, anytime you have a group of 3 or more people, a culture develops and core values develop and sort of ways of behaving with each other, and acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior arise. Most of the time, those things are not written down. In a family, they're rarely written down, but they exist because they're things that, okay, we do that or we don't do this. And so culture, I think, is vital and a really important part of business to recognize its role, because it allows you to focus on talent and explaining to people who are coming in how we do things and that a lot. So Delta focuses really incredibly on their team members. And it will be a fascinating study to see what happens there through this unprecedented time. Because the reality is, unfortunately, if you don't have cash, you don't have cash to pay people. I mean, that's just that's the way business works. That's the way capitalism works. So it'll be interesting to see this. Now, traditionally, Delta have focused really intently on their people. And nearly every Delta employee will tell you that. And if you go down, I've had the chance to be at headquarters a lot, and it's like there's this sort of Delta way. A crew at other airlines have told me that it's almost cultish, and it's intimidating in some ways. But it is. It's like we are Delta. And in fact, it's funny. I have this sort of interesting relationship because I have a lot of friends at Delta and have gotten to know a lot of people at Delta through the videos that I've put together with them. But I fly other airlines. I am not, and I will criticize Delta. And there's this sort of like love-hate relationship there. But in terms of their culture, I think nobody has traditionally treated their people quite like Delta. And if you go back to post 9/11, everybody's going bankrupt. Everybody except Continental, by the way. Gordon Bethune, former CEO, I got to sit next to on my next to last flight. That was so cool. But Delta made their leadership. Ed Bastian at the time was CFO. They said, look, if you come with us through this time, we're going to have to do pay cuts and we're going to have to do all this really tough stuff. If you come through us this time, on the other side, we will institute a profit sharing plan like you can't believe. And so tons of people stuck with them through the tough times, and they made those. So you were seeing, massive billions of dollars in profit sharing payouts, all because of that commitment to their employees. And what the Delta team will tell you is that they really believed if we support our team members, if we support our crew, if we support our staff, our employees, all of them, they'll take care of our customers. And that's what passengers on Delta see every day.
And is this why you feel so much with Delta? Because this is something you do with your own company as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I really admire companies that treat their people empathetically. Doesn't mean that you don't give them bad news. It doesn't mean you don't have to make tough decisions. But to approach people with empathy is something that's really admirable. And I think from my seat on the sidelines, not exactly the outside of the sidelines, Delta looks like they're doing that. Not to say that other airlines don't do the same thing, but Delta does it really well.
It's one of the things that my my own employer, I'm really lucky to be still employed due to these what's going on. And he said, like, we've been making sacrifices for the employees during the good times, and now during the bad times. Now we're asking to make those similar sacrifices back to get to better times again, right? And that really struck with me.
That's it. That's it.
Right. Now, back to better times. I want to share a clip with you on your Emirates flight. Blake cannot stop talking about Emirates. Like, I got almost tired of it. But he sits in the back and he's still happy, so that's okay. You went to the front. Let me share a clip.
This thing is incredible. It's massive. I mean, you can't really call it a seat. So Sam Chewy was calling it a lounge and a disco and a hotel room and a seat in the sky. And I think all that's true, but it seems bigger than that. I mean, I feel like I could have somebody in here with me and I wouldn't even know it. I mean, this is a crazy amount of space.
I love that clip.
Yeah, that was fun, and that's an example of experimenting, right? Trying new techniques and learning different ways to make the software work for you. I use Final Cut Pro, and I remember that was the hardest part about that whole video, was figuring out how to make that masking work, and also recording it, because I had to go out into the aisle and like lean through this window that like they just bring your food to. So the purser and the flight attendant were like looking at me like, what is he doing? Because I had to do it a bunch of times to get the right like distance. That was fun.
That was really fun. So would you say that was one of your like best flights ever, or
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember, I literally, like I said it in the video, and it's no joke. Like I could not sleep the night before. I think I had like 2 hours of sleep. I mean, it was just, I was so excited.
Because this video, I think you posted around July last year.
I feel like it was, maybe the year before. No, maybe it was. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's not even that long ago, because I think only in the past year or so, your channel has really exploded to the 155,000 subscribers
it's still mind blowing. I mean, that's freaking unbelievable. It's it's unbelievable. I never started this. Like Blake said it well. Like if you ever meet somebody on YouTube who says, "Oh, I don't really pay attention to the numbers," yeah, they do. But I never started it with the intention of growing it. Like it never occurred to me until, I don't know, I was well and truly into it, that these kinds of numbers were possible. I was just doing it because nobody had put out a video about Air France A380 first class. Yeah. And it would be really cool to make a video about the inaugural flight of the Delta A350. Like, I was doing it because it was just fun to make these videos. And then as I started to get into it and realized consistency was key, that's when it started to really grow.
Because you've been consistently using the Premiere feature, the function. How is that going for you? Because I don't have a big enough audience to be able to pull it off. I woke up at 6:30 this morning to be able to watch yours because I'm in mountain time here, and it's 2 hours earlier than it is with you. Terrible timing, I'd say.
Well, that's the thing about it. There's no good time for that. And remind me, I want to tell you, I have been to Edmonton. I'll tell you a funny story. Well, it's not really that funny, but don't let me forget to tell you my Edmonton story. Yeah, all right. I read somewhere, I mean, like everybody who does this, you're always doing the research to see what you can. And what they said, and it makes perfect sense. If a platform you're on releases a new feature, start using that feature early because they'll reward that, which makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So I started doing the Premiere, and the reason I've continued to do it, and I got a lot of hate. Like, I'll put the Premiere out there and I'll get a bunch of downvotes or negative comments because people, but the reality is I keep talking about consistency. I'll always release a video at 9 a.m. Eastern time on a Saturday. Yeah. If I have a video that week, that's when it will go. So it's ready before then. Whether I premiere it or just release it, it's going to be out there at the same time. By premiering it, it builds a little bit of excitement, I think, maybe about it. Mm-hmm. But the real reason I do it is because of the chat feature. So I'm able to connect real time with the audience, which helps me make better content because I hear feedback from them in real time. Comments are not live, of course. Yeah. So that's why I do it. And I really do. I have a fun time with it. It's a highlight. I got a cup of coffee and, I'm chatting, and it's a good thing.
You've been asking for feedback pretty much from the start. I think I'm not sure if it's originally you who started doing it, but a double thumbs down. Where does that come from?
I did. I saw it somewhere and I thought that was pretty funny. And I think I saw it on like a science channel or something. But it's funny how many people think I'm serious. Like, they'll leave a comment like, well, that doesn't do anything, right? That's my point. But no, I think that there's a guy named in Australia named Stephen Drury who does some GA flying and a really cool channel, beautiful videography. He made a video early on in his channel. I think we started about the same time. And he said he wished that if you gave a thumbs down, you had to give feedback. And I think that's great. Like so a dude in the premiere this morning, he said, sorry, man, I had to give you a thumbs down. I just don't like any negative news about aviation. Of course, this video was the survey results. So there was some negative news. Like, thank you. That is a thumbs down that is helpful to me. And, but some people just give it and then move on. But engagement's engagement. So whatever you can get, like, I'll take it. Negative comments, thumbs down, thumbs up, just YouTube reports, any engagement.
It feeds the algorithm, right?
That's what the people who really like send a lot of hate don't know. Like, I'll take it. Bring it on.
Yeah, I've had this bot comment on a couple of my videos, like the minute after I published it. Tom, you've probably had it on your channel as well.
Great content, really liked it, or whatever he says.
Yeah, super generic. And I'm like, thanks for the comment. It's good for the algorithm. Maybe I get another suggestion here, right? I want to move to the questions from viewers. Like we've done with all the episodes so far, I ask you on Instagram and Twitter to send some questions in for the next podcast host. If you're not following me on Twitter or Instagram yet, the link is in the description down below, and I'll be announcing all the podcast guests here as well. Was hoping to get a little bit more questions than I actually got, but I got a couple good ones. Starting off with Mr. Blake E from Birmingham. He's got a question for Jeb.
Is that Birmingham, Alabama?
I think UK.
Oh, okay. I know that guy.
Yeah, he's like a stalker. I have a question for Jeb. It's common knowledge that Greensboro is the jewel crown of North Carolina. But if you were forced to choose, where else would you live?
Ooh. If I could have a choice, I think Singapore, Washington, D.C., or Sydney.
What keeps you in Greensboro, though? Like, other than work?
Yeah, born and raised, and this is where our business is. So this is home.
And what do you love so much about it? Because Greensboro is a central point around your videos. You mention it fairly often. What's so special about Greensboro, North Carolina that...
Well, Robin, here's the deal. As soon as we can fly again, you're going to hop on a plane. You're going to fly from Edmonton, say, to Chicago, and then get on CRJ 550 down here to Greensboro, and I'm going to show you what's so great about it. No, it's a great sort of mid-sized town in the South, so great weather, no traffic, but plenty of amenities. We've got a really great airport, super nice airport, actually, with the motto of our airport, the tagline is "Fly Easy." And that's the truth. I mean, you can park literally in front of the terminal and walk right in. This is a great all-around place. It's home. That's one thing. But just in general, it's nice to be in a city that doesn't have a lot of that, a lot of the challenges that many places do.
Makes sense. And that's fairly similar to Edmonton as well, because it's a mid-sized city. It gets very cold in winter, but it has its charm. What keeps me here as well, even though it gets cold in winter, it gets down to minus 40 here Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I like the cold weather. I'd rather be cold than hot any day of the week.
Fair enough. Then why Sydney?
That's a good point. I mean, come on, why Sydney? Why Sydney? I would tolerate the heat for Sydney. I mean,
makes sense. Newcastle Flyer on Instagram is asking you, what's your least favorite U.S. airline?
Ooh, I hate least favorites. Oh, because that means you're going to offend somebody. Oh, no. I would have to say of sort of the major airlines. All right. So the good news is, I'd have to say American. I'm sorry. And the reason is actually probably going to be going away as a result of this. So I spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C., so I fly between Greensboro and Washington, and that experience is terrible. So CRJ 200, which if you've seen my videos, you may know I'm not a fan of. And
you compared them, right?
I did, and they're all terrible. Anyway, so it's a CRJ 200 flight, and they've eliminated those for the fleet. So that's good news, potentially. But also, their on-time performance is so bad. I find that if I'm booking, and I think Billy Gilbert's a fan of American, so I'm no doubt offending him. Sorry, Billy. But I find that if I'm flying with American, I need to count on a significant delay. So I basically book travel according to, if I'm traveling with book expecting a delay.
Wow. Yeah, I have very limited experience with American. I booked a flight on one of their Airbus A321, and this is why they're definitely not my favorite airline in the US, and that's just inconsistency in product. You can book a flight on an A321, and either you get an ex-US Airlines or an American Airlines A321, and that's such a difference in quality product, right?
Absolutely.
Next question is from Scottish Traveler 66. We kind of already answered this one. What flights were you supposed to be on before all this? That's
we called it the Easter Island. Easter is on, EIEIO, and I guess now Easter Island. Easter is off, which was Santiago, Easter Island, and then Tahiti, and then out to the UK and back. So yeah.
Josh Waddle on Instagram. We've seen him in the first podcast episode. He was one of the spotters who was happy enough to share his pictures for Name the Plane. He's asking what inspired you to start vlogging.
Yeah, it was watching specifically Dennis, luxury travel expert, who's a caption guy who does really like meditative videos. Sam Chui, and you just sharing passion. Look, as a kid, I was really into airplanes, and then at some point along the line, I guess maybe middle school or something, I decided, well, that's not cool. I shouldn't like airplanes anymore. And so I stepped away from it for a long time. And then I realized, I love aviation. I love what it can do for people, where it can take us, where it can connect us, like the people that work in it. Like, I love everything about aviation. I mean, I don't care if it's standing on the ramp in the heat, fueling a plane, or loading bags, or taking tickets, or flying the plane, like whatever it is. I love it all. And so I just wanted to share that authentic passion for this amazing industry. So I think that's really what it was.
Have you never considered a job in aviation then? Or was it just that you had the family business, so you didn't really have a choice?
Yeah, it was really that. But like, I love this job that I've created. You know what I mean? That you've created. Like, we got the best of all worlds, right? It's not. I'm not a full-time guy doing this, and there's some incredible full-time people doing it. Like Paul and Noel and other guys like that. But I love the opportunity to work with different airlines and see different ways. Like, more than an aviation enthusiast, I'm a passenger experience enthusiast. So that's the part that I love. So maybe if there were an opportunity to, I don't know, design seats or something like that, maybe, but I'm not an engineer, so I'll stick with what I got.
Sure. Sounds good. Tom Willard on Twitter is asking, can you rank your top 3 noise-canceling headphones provided by the airlines? I know he loves his Bose QC earphones, but I do recall he's given praise to airlines provided ones.
Okay. All right. I'll count down. 3, 2, 1. All right. Number 3, I kind of criticized him, but I was trying to ham it up, and I shouldn't have criticized him. The headphones from British Airways flight number 1, London City to Shannon,
New York.
Okay. I don't think they were Bang & Olufsen. I think they were Sunsizer. Anyway, those are number 3.
They were.
Those are number 3. Number 2 are our Bose QC35s in Lufthansa first class. And the number 1 greatest in-flight headphones ever. I mean, I know you said provided by the airline, but I got to go with number 1 is QC20s from Bose of mine. I mean, sorry.
Q sponsored message.
Yeah, right. No, I'll tell you a funny story. So I get a lot of guff about that. Like, you must be sponsored by Bose. So I never was. And then I was in the back of this conference. And I think there's a lesson in this, actually. So I was in the back of this conference. It was really boring. I won't tell you where I was, but it was a really boring conference. And so I just went into LinkedIn and I looked up like Bose social media, and I found the woman who ran the social media program for Bose. And I sent her a LinkedIn message and I said, hey, I make these videos about airlines, and I always talk about your headphones. It's kind of become a thing. And just so you know. And so this was right when I was crossing 50,000 subscribers. And so she said, yeah, let's talk. Let's hop on the phone. Is there something we can do to help? And I said, well, I just crossed 50,000 subscribers. I'd love to do a giveaway. And so she sent me a pair of headphones, like QC 35s, the big ones. And so that was our giveaway. Yeah, those guys. Yeah. So that was our giveaway for crossing 50,000 subscribers. So yeah. And then they set me up with an affiliate link where if somebody clicks that link, I'll get a little. I haven't even crossed the threshold to get a check yet. Like it's you're supposed to get $100. I think I've made like 12. I mean, so the myth of the massive amount of revenue from this relationship I have with Bose is just that. It's a
but it's the same again. you just have to ask, right? Just reach out.
That's
It's
it.
so important.
Like, whoever, like, yeah, exactly.
Next up on Twitter, Natalia Duggan is asking, "Hey there, I'm interested to know Jeb's opinion on trip insurance and trip health insurance. Does he purchase or use insurance of any kind during his travels, especially far-flung destinations lacking healthcare infrastructure?"
Yeah. So I've always, I mean, in the last few years anyway, when I really have been traveling heavily, have a travel insurance policy that covers not only interruptions or lost luggage, all that kind of stuff, but also has medical evacuation. I made a trip to Antarctica a few years ago, and that was required there. And so I got an annual policy. I've thankfully never had to use it, but I've maintained that policy throughout the last several years. It was also required in St. Helena, for that matter. Like a lot of these really weird places will, that's a judgmental, these far-flung places, I like the way she put that, require that. And so it's a little bit more peace of mind.
Absolutely. Now, I know credit cards in especially down in the US are very competitive. Is this something that comes with a credit card usually? I know it's back in Holland, but
yeah, there is some coverage from I'm not a credit card guy. Like I have my own plan to like make all that work for me, but I wouldn't feel comfortable advising anyone on it. Chase has a little bit of coverage, but the program, the policy that I have is with Alliance, and it's much more robust than any of that, and is as far as I'm concerned, money well spent.
Perfect. I think that covers the question really well. JP on Twitter is asking, "Hey Robin, I've always wondered what Jeb Brooks does for his primary job/profession. Mentions to travel for work and working while he's traveling, but I'm curious to what he does." We've spoken about your company. We haven't really spoken about what you actually do.
Yeah. So my work is often interfacing with partners or vendors or employees or consultants that we work with, that kind of thing. It's a lot of meetings. So the joke for anybody that travels for work is it sounds more romantic than it really is, because a hotel conference room in Amsterdam looks a whole lot like one in Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah, for sure. I spoke to my mom just before we went into the call, and she was watching some of your videos, and she was like, "Yeah, I wanted to know, he's traveling for work, but she wanted to know if you were like my dad, where you just go for work, you go to the place you need to be, you do your job, and then you fly home." But she saw the Saint Helena video, and she knew that at least you enjoy where you're going.
Yeah, that's it. I always, unless it's like, I do a lot of work in Phoenix, so that's in and out. I've spent enough time. I lived there for a little while. But if I'm going somewhere new, I always try to tack on a little bit of time. And then Suzanne and I've gotten really good at doing really fast trips. So this was crazy. We did a trip to Kenya. We were on the ground in the Masai Mara for like 36 or 48 hours. We did, I think it was about 48 hours in Shanghai, the long way. So we flew through Europe. So yeah, we like seeing the world, but sometimes we've got to squeeze it in between, real life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like those quick trips, right? I did do a quick trip in January to Phoenix, and I'm just trying to get as many stopovers as you can.
That's it. I mean, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, look, the travel, half the fun is the way you get there.
And that's what makes us different from normal people, because our trip starts at the airport, not at our destination.
That's so well put. And then I think about the first night of a conference, or first day of a conference, you're sort of connecting with other people. You ask them where they're from or whatever. I always try to figure out how they got from wherever they're from here. Okay, so that would be a United flight, is that right? And let's see, you came through Chicago, so A319. It's like, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You don't get it." Next.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now, this is something you've been anticipating from the start. Name the plane. How confident do you feel
Here's the thing. It's like I got a friend who was on Jeopardy, and I was saying, Jeopardy looks really easy. Yeah, it looks easy when you're watching it and you don't actually have to play it. So we'll see. All right, let's see. I'm gonna go with a 5. That's how I feel.
So Blake last week had 8 planes right, and Billy Gilbert is still leading the leaderboard with 13 correct aircraft. I really didn't know whether I had to get like 100 images or like 5 ready for you. So I hope that you're not too fast today. The images today, again, just like the podcast 2 weeks ago, come from Zach, who is jfk.spotting on Instagram, and That Plane Guy on YouTube. Thank you very much for allowing us to let us use your pictures. And I'll make sure that his YouTube and Instagram are in the description below. Let me get my timer ready so we can make sure we're on a minute. And let me make sure that you can see the logo.
I can. Yes, I can. I can see the logo. That is an affirmative, Captain.
Perfect.
Oh awesome. Man, I'm honest. Like no joke, Robin. I am nervous right now. That's not an exaggeration. This is weird. All right.
Anyway,
I'm coming for you, Billy.
If you're ready, then we'll start.
Let's go. 787.
Yep.
-8.
Yep.
BAE 146 or Avro RJ 85.
Yeah, correct. RJ.
Embraer 190.
Yep, correct.
767.
Wow.
A300.
A310, sorry.
I always get those mixed up. A321.
Correct.
A220.
Yes.
A340.
Yep.
MD88.
Yes, correct.
Dornier 328.
Yeah, wow.
ATR 72.
Yes.
757. Ooh, that's that's for trans kind of Porter
time.
-8. Oh, Q400.
Yeah. So you are at 12, correct? So you almost
A310.
Cool. So
that was fun. I got to fly an A310 with Air Azores. It was my worst flight ever.
How do you pronounce that again?
Air Azores. So I said Air Azores in the video because that's what I've always said, and boy, did I get flamed.
Yeah, I did want to mention that. Anyway, thank you, Jeb. That was so much fun. What do you think?
Oh my God, this was a blast. Like, thank you so much, Robin. I truly love what you're doing with this. This is genius, a great way to provide content and provide, I think, a fun way for those of us that do this to connect with an audience. And I think for those that watch this, especially the ones who watch the end, it's a really cool way to get a little bit more insight into what we're really like, in real life. But thank you very much for having me, and thank you for doing what you're doing. This is awesome.
I really had a blast. Thank you so much for spending the time today on the podcast. Who would you like to vote on for a next podcast? Who would you like to see?
I think Paul Winging It Lucas would be a great guest. I think.
Okay, well, I really hope we can get him on the podcast. I think that will be a lot of fun. Cool, awesome. Well, thank you very much for watching the 3rd episode of the Vuelogs Crosscheck Podcast. I had a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Jeb. And next week, we'll be back with another trip report where we'll be flying on the Air Canada Boeing 787 Dreamliner. I was originally planned to fly on a Boeing 767, which they only have like a couple left. And then last minute, they swapped it. So that's something that you'll be seeing on a trip report next week. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next week.